Meeting of the Norfolk City Council. We'll call the meeting to order and call your attention to the Open Meetings Act posted here in the council chambers. You now please join me in rising for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Granquist.
Here.
Arns.
Here.
Merrill.
Here.
McCarthy.
Here.
Murin.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
Clausen.
Present.
Hildebrand.
Here.
Okay, with that, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Your Honor.
Motion second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
And then a motion to approve the full agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
All right, that takes us to item number 26 on your council agenda under public hearings and related action. I will now open this public hearing concerning an application to the Nebraska Department of Economic Development for a community development block grant for emergent threat COVID to be used for removal of architectural barriers, updates to meet ADA requirements, and COVID-19 related social distancing at the Bright Horizons shelter. And to kick off discussion on this and give us some background, we'll hear from Andrea Larson of the Northeast Nebraska Economic Development District. Good evening.
Hi. So I am here in relation to a full application to the Nebraska Department of Economic Development for a community development block grant emergent threat COVID for Bright Horizons. We were approached by the Department of Economic Development a couple months ago. Bright Horizons has been trying to secure funding for some improvements for some time, and there wasn't a grant option that fit their needs. When the Department of Economic Development awarded their most recent round of emergent threat COVID grants, they had an entity or entities that were unable to accept the award, so they had some extra money. And in talking to Bright Horizons, the Department of Economic Development found that they would be able to roll those improvements into a COVID grant. We just have to push it through really quickly. So what we're asking is approval from the City of Norfolk to request $319,365.42 in CDGB funds for an emergent threat COVID grant, of which $285,865.42 will be used for removal of architectural barriers, as well as to update accommodations to meet ADA requirements and for COVID-19 related social distancing at the Bright Horizon shelter. $10,000 of this will be used for construction management, and $25,000 will be used for general administration of the grant. A private donation of $1,000 has been made to the facility for the fencing portion of the project, and another $500 was received from Healthy Blue for fencing as well. The total budget for project cost and grant administration is $320,865.42. There are no matching funds required from the City of Norfolk because this is an emergent threat COVID grant.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. What is the application process? What is the deadline for this grant, and when's the expected award announcement?
So basically, the grant deadlines had already passed. They reopened this back up to us and to another community. The first step was the pre-application process, which has been completed. We have not received word back yet that the pre-application has been approved, though we're anticipating that. This is in anticipation of the full application opening, because as soon as that opens, I need to submit it right away, and we have to have this public hearing out of the way. I know DED had initially wanted to have all of the grant funds awarded by June 1st, but that was not possible for them, so I anticipate as soon as this full application is open and approved, grant funds will be awarded in short order.
These were COVID-related dollars that Nebraska Department of Economic Development received from the federal government.
Correct.
And the nature of the work at Bright Horizons, which provides critical services in the community, is, it sounds like, modernizing facilities in various ways, but one of those ways is to meet existing ADA requirements.
Correct. They are going to do some reconstruction to have an ADA bedroom and bathroom, which will allow facility to shelter individuals that are physically disabled and can't walk up steps. They're also going to turn a separate bedroom into a sitting or family area to allow families private space to apply for benefits, partake in telehealth counseling, and other client services while being socially distanced. There'll be an addition of office space for social distancing, a more secure garage entrance that'll provide safety improvements to at-risk clientele, as well as social distancing. Carpet will be replaced with laminate flooring in the basement for better sanitizing of floors, and then smaller projects after that.
Okay. Any other questions for Andrea? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
This is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to make comment can do so now. Okay, seeing and hearing no one, I will move to close the hearing and proceed to item 27. Would look for a motion to consider resolution number 2022-19, approving a grant application to the Nebraska Department of Economic Development for a community development block grant in the amount of $319,365.42, and authorizing the mayor to proceed with the formulation of any and all contracts, documents, or other memoranda between the city of Norfolk and the Nebraska Department of Economic Development so as to effect acceptance of the grant.
We'll offer for consideration Resolution 2022-19.
Second?
Motion and second. Any discussion or questions or comments on this, council? Okay. Again, Bright Horizons is an organization that provides very critical services in the community, and I can't think of much better use for some of these dollars than to help modernize that facility. So we thank everybody involved, NENED, State of Nebraska for making these funds available, and Bright Horizons for their work here in Norfolk. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Resolution 2022-19 is adopted.
Okay, item 28, I'll open this public hearing to consider an amendment to section 27-2 of the official city code to add a definition for public signs, to amend section 27-321 to include an exception allowing public signs to be placed in the public right-of-way of a street or highway. And for some background to kick off this discussion, we'll hear from Val Grimes, our city planner.
Thank you. This is somewhat of a cleanup. We did not have public signs as a definition in our definitions section of the zoning code, so we are putting that in there just so that we know what is a public sign and what is not a public sign. Because in 27.321, we do say that no sign shall be placed in the public right-of-way. And so now that we have proposed the public signs definition, we've then proposed after that says except for those defined as public signs in 27-2. And if the public signs as defined are not approved by the MUTCD, the traffic control manual, then they're permitted after an agreement's entered into with the city for locations and design, so that you all will know what is going in your public right-of-way and where they are going if they're not standard traffic control signs. That is the proposal before you tonight.
Okay, thank you, Val. Any questions? This is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to make comment can do so now. Seeing and hearing no one, I will close discussion and move to Planning Commission report, please.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on May 17, 2021, 2022, to consider approval of an amendment to section 27-2 of the official city code to add a definition for public signs, to amend section 27-321 to include an exception allowing public signs to be placed in the public right-of-way of a street or highway. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the amendment with a 7-0 vote.
Okay, with that, I'll close the hearing and move to item number 29. Look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5783, approving an amendment to section 27-2 of the official city code to add a definition for public signs, to amend section 27-321 to include an exception allowing public signs to be placed in the public right-of-way of a street or highway.
I'll make a motion for consideration of ordinance number 5783.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion on this, council? Val, maybe I missed it, but can you give an example of what an exception allowing public signs to be placed in the public right-of-way would be?
So our definition says traffic control, public transit service signs, utility information signs, safety, danger,
Okay,
trespassing, that sort.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. All right. Any other questions or discussion, council? Hearing none. Short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend section 27-2 of the official city code to add a definition for public signs, to amend section 27-321 to include an exception allowing public signs to be placed in the public right-of-way of a street or highway, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5783 carries on first reading.
I'd make a motion we suspend the rules and pass this ordinance on second and third.
Second.
Motion and second to suspend the rules and approve on second, third readings. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5783 carries on second and third.
Okay, item number 30. We'll open this public hearing to consider the redevelopment plan for the Valley Drive Properties LLC redevelopment project. And to give us some background on this, Randy Gates, our city finance officer, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Valley Drive Properties LLC submitted a tax increment financing application for property located northwest of the intersection of South Victory Road and Highway 275. It borders the North Fork of the Elkhorn River levee. At the April 18th Community Development Agency meeting, the agency accepted the plan and forwarded it to the Planning Commission for review and recommendation. The Planning Commission held a hearing on this at their May 3rd meeting and recommended approval on a 9-0 vote. The agency then approved a resolution at their May 16th meeting recommending approval of the redevelopment plan to the City Council. This parcel is about 9.28 acres and zoned R1. The redeveloper intends to rezone this as R2 and plat into 25 duplex lots for a total of 50 housing units. The project's expected to be constructed in 3 phases. First phase would be construction of all infrastructure and creation of buildable lots. The second phase, construction of approximately 24 duplex dwelling units. And the third phase, the construction of approximately 26 dwelling units. First phase is expected to be completed in 2022, second phase in 2023, and the third phase in 2024. The project will require construction of access from Victory Road, along with the construction of paving, sewer, water, storm sewer, electrical service, public walks, and related infrastructure, along with significant dirt work. Total TIF eligible costs are expected to be over $2.1 million. Current assessed valuation is $52,000. After development into buildable lots, expected assessed valuation is $375,000, which is the assumed base value. On completion of the duplexes, the project is expected to have an assessed valuation of $6.9 million, supporting $1,220,000 of TIF at an interest rate of 6.2%. This project's not economically feasible without TIF. The redeveloper's return on investment with TIF ranges between 0.69 and 6.63% over 15 years. Without TIF, the redevelopment project yields a predominantly negative return on investment, ranging between a negative 2.56 and 2.62% over 15 years. Kelby Herman isn't able to be here tonight, but Roger Nagle is here to speak on behalf of the developer. Either he or I can answer your questions.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Any questions? I have one question. The first phase of the project is anticipated to involve how many housing units?
24 housing units is what they had in the plan, if I remember right.
Okay. This is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to make comment can do so now.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman. Roger Nadrical, CEO of NeighborWorks Northeast Nebraska. And even though any of the documentation that you have received doesn't show that we are a partner in part of this development that's before you here tonight, we are part of a tax credit application in conjunction with Kelby Herman Progressive Builders and the Mesner Development Company. So we're the nonprofit component of that tax credit application, which was submitted in March, I believe was the deadline. We're anticipating here on that on the 17th of this month, and hopefully NIFA will approve this as a tax credit project, and then we'll be involved in those 20 to 24 units of that first phase. It'll be income based, this first phase, to serve the low to moderate income communities as rental units. There'll be rental units, not home ownership. Second phase, the market rate units, those would be a combination, I believe, of ownership and rental. So we're glad to partner with those two entities like we have in the Norfolk subdivision, and it's great partners to work with, so we want to be a part of this project as well as hopefully we can get the tax credits approved through NIFA.
Thank you, Roger. Any questions? So the form of these duplex townhome?
Yes, they're all
Okay.
townhome
Yeah,
duplex
okay.
units, yes.
Okay. All right.
All 2 to 3 bedroom units.
Okay. So,
Okay.
well, yeah, I would agree that the partnership you've had with Mr. Herman to this point is produced value and added significantly to housing inventories in the
Right.
community. So look
Great.
forward to seeing another project go forward.
And there hasn't been too many rental projects developed lately that serve the low to moderate income communities.
Right.
So hopefully we can get this for the community. So
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for your
Thank you,
support.
Roger. Again, it's a public hearing. Anyone else wishing to make comment can do so now. Okay, seeing and hearing no one, we'll move to item number 31. I'd look for a motion to consider resolution number 2022-20, approving the redevelopment plan for the Valley Drive Properties LLC redevelopment project.
I'll offer for consideration Resolution 2022-20.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, resolution 2022-20 is adopted.
Okay, that takes us to our regular agenda, and item number 32 would look for a motion to consider approval of an engineering design services contract with JEO Consulting Group Incorporated for the Norfolk Levee Trail Connection of Norfolk Avenue project for a total project fee of $0. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Motion second. For some background on this, if we're ready, Steve Ramus, our City Public Works Director.
Thanks, Anna. Mayor and Council, this is an agreement with JEO to help us with some of our gap sidewalk projects here in the community. Every year, JEO has access to some UNL engineering students through an internship program. They have agreed to dedicate 3 of those students to this project for Norfolk. And this would extend sidewalk along the south side of Norfolk Avenue and connect it into the trail system on the west side of the levee. It's about roughly a block, 2 blocks, depending on how you want to count a block over there. Heavily trafficked sections, probably one of the most requested sections of sidewalk extension that I get in the community. So I just wanted to bring your attention to this and answer any questions you have.
Okay. Hearing no questions. Any discussion on this, council? I can say this particular stretch is one that's needed. I see the need on a regular basis, so it would be good to finally address this gap connection in our sidewalks in this pretty heavily trafficked part of town. Any questions or other discussion?
I'll ask one, I guess. What's the anticipated time? How long did it take to do this?
They would deliver us, kind of the meat of the project that we would need to put together plans and bid this towards the end of summer. I would say somewhere around first week of August. So I think there's 3 students that they're going to dedicate. They work about 8 hours each a week. So by the time we get the contract back to them and kind of get them moving and have them come out here and do surveys and stuff, it's about a 5-6 week design for them.
Steve, is this in our budget?
This is, the design is.
I guess I do have one serious question. As far as the sidewalk goes, how will this be assessed? When it's after it's designed, will this be a?
The majority of it is on city property.
Okay. Any further questions? Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Okay, item 33, we'll look for a motion first to pull off the table of ordinance number 5774, approving an amendment to the official city code to enact Division 7 to Article 8 of Chapter 27 of the official city code, providing for the creation of a highway corridor overlay district. As a note, ordinance number 5774 passed on first reading at the May 2nd City Council meeting and was tabled at the May 16th Council meeting. So the first order of business would be a motion to pull the item off the table.
I'll make a motion to pull the item from the table.
Motion second, and please vote.
Waiting on one more down there. Yep. There we go. All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Okay, now I need a motion for the underlying, to hear the underlying ordinance, right? Or not? We can just move into discussion. Okay. All right, so we're back on the table with the underlying ordinance, number 5774. And for a little background on that, Val, can you refresh our memories and tell everyone where we're at, please?
Yes, this highway corridor overlay is a proposed new district for the zoning code. It would probably be similar to the riverfront overlay district that got put in place here a couple years ago. This is for the corridors of 275 and 81 from our extents of our ETJ, and that is what you would see in the map in the next one. Also, in the map and the text go together hand in hand. This would contain aesthetics for landscaping, building, and some uses, whether they would be prohibited, conditional, or outright permitted.
Okay, thank you, Val. And to open discussion, I'll just give a little background here on the underlying policy, which started initial discussion almost a year ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. So it's been through subcommittee process, and the underlying goal from my perspective is for this overlay corridor to establish a basic set of guidelines that promote consistency and regular aesthetic rules for the major corridors throughout our community, which essentially are Highway 81 and Highway 275. And we talked about this for as long as we did because I think we wanted to get the policy right in terms of balance and not be overly prescriptive or hard to do business with, but also establish some basically rules of order for new development, and again to present a good face to the outside world on the community and promote community pride. So the ordinance was, as we mentioned, passed on first reading at the May 2nd meeting. We did receive some contact from a local business owner regarding billboards specifically, which under this ordinance would become a conditional use permit use. And so we had some further discussions about that and had a work session earlier this afternoon with the entire council and the business owner, and some developments came out of that. I think we came to general consensus on some points here to slightly revise the policy, and we discussed an amendment to the underlying ordinance that would remove the billboard section from the conditional use permit requirement within the ordinance, and we also discussed removing another portion that has to do with temporary merchants, which essentially entail food trucks. Currently under the ordinance that they would be required to move during non-business operating hours. And I think the majority felt that was maybe too strenuous given the fact that there are state regulations for food trucks already requiring their regular moving from the spots that they are. So I just wanted to present that as where we are with the ordinance right now. Council members who were part of the work session earlier this afternoon, you're free to add anything to that, but I think we do have a motion on the table to address the things that I just mentioned.
Yes.
50, yep. Yep, we're on, item number 33 addresses 5774.
So do we have to adjust the ordinance, pass that, and then vote to pass the ordinance, correct?
Right, I'm going to make a
Right,
motion
yep.
to amend this ordinance, 5774, to strike the following two subsections within section 27-280.25 for non-residential property users. So first, subsection B8, which reads billboard signs, and second, the subsection C, immediately following, which addresses temporary merchants and their ability to park within the overlay district. So this motion to amend would strike subsection B8 and C within section 27-280.25.
Okay. So the motion is made. Second. Okay, motion and second for the amendment. And just as a reminder, this is a motion just to amend the ordinance before us. So if this motion to amend should pass, then we have the ordinance as amended on the table, and then we have overall discussion about that. So this is just a vote on the motion to amend. Any further discussion on the amendment?
It's just a motion on the amendment.
Just on the amendment, right? Okay. Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Okay, so now we are at the underlying ordinance as amended, and again, those amendments address the removal of billboards from conditional use permit requirements and the removal of the temporary merchant provision related to food trucks. So, council, we are the floor is open to discussion. there is any. I'm okay with going straight to a vote.
I've got one thing. First of all, thanks Josh for putting this together. I know this is something that's been very important to you, and I agree with you that this is something that's important for our community. I'm kind of stuck in the weeds on a few things right now with where I sit on things. We've discussed these at each meeting. I brought it up.
Okay.
So I guess people kind of know where I stand right now. Again, this isn't a bad thing for the community. I feel like maybe the 44 line items that are included in this, and 9 of those would be deal with green space and trees and whatnot. I think it maybe get somewhat problematic in how you enforce that, and then have to go and get your waiver. But other than that, I just feel like if we tweak some of that, get some of that out of there, make it a little less, just more like we'd have an overlay district committee that would oversee this and would have the authority to yay or nay a project basically on, or approve a project on what facade and stuff like that we're dealing with. I worry that if you go and now you have to go get a waiver, then you have to go to planning and zoning, and the planning and zoning right now doesn't want to pass waivers. I don't know, I can't speak for them or whatnot. You could be potentially turned down. And really it's not turning down a project. Remember that. This is not going to turn a project down. It's just going to change what you put on your project. So this does not hinder development. It's enhancing development, but I'm having an issue with some of the things that go along with it. But other than that, it's not a bad deal.
Before we get any further into discussion, Brianna reminded me that we do technically need a motion for the amended ordinance. Right. So a motion to consider the amended ordinance.
I'll make a motion to consider the amendment on ordinance number 5774.
Okay. Motion second. So now, again, we're open for discussion on the amended ordinance. And Shane, I appreciate that and those concerns. You've been consistent throughout voicing some of those concerns. I'd just like to point out again, I think we were pretty sensitive in formulating this not to get too burdensome for new development. And the other point I'd make is this is really focused on new development. So what exists stays as in. None of this claws back to change anything that currently exists. And there is a strong exemption process built in for redevelopment projects, unless there's significant overhaul of a site plan. And maybe Val, you can shed a little bit of light on that. So we did want to make sure that for any existing use, if there are improvements or some changes to the property, that wouldn't mean that that property owner has to come in and follow these set of guidelines necessarily, unless it's a significant overhaul of the property site. Correct?
Correct. Yeah, we have one in here that says reconstruction or replacement of something existing following a casualty loss. They just come in and rebuild. And then if there is reconstruction, replacement, addition, or enlargements are 50% or greater than what is there currently, then the provisions of this code only apply to the new section. So it doesn't even go back and catch the existing either. It's just pertaining to the new development occurring.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd be as far as, I agree with 75% of that. The part where I'm hung up a little bit is on substantial redevelopment on existing lots, not new development. This would be redevelopment on existing lots, smaller lots, where you have to try to shoehorn in certain projects to fit, because you're buying a lot that'll have substantial cost behind it because where it's located. So the lots are worth a lot of money. Mainly because of traffic counts, right? So you've got a lot of people interested in those lots because of the traffic counts. So there will be buyers, and sometimes you need that wiggle room to fit in what you can fit in. So, and when I'm saying that, I'm talking about some of our green space requirements, tree requirements, whatnot, and going through that waiver process, how that's going to be. That's kind of where I'd just like to take some time and focus on that little part of it. And I know there's some people here that I've talked with that own these type of lots and have the same concern. And there is a nice provision written in here. I agree with all that. It's just that one small part of the, those are the areas that are gonna be the toughest to comply. Sometimes, not all the time. But if you talk about, I think we talked about like a parking lot over 6,000 square foot, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that is what is currently in our code.
Right.
5% of the parking lot needs to be green.
Right.
And that's included in your tree.
And roughly a 6,000 square foot parking lot would be about 20 stalls. So that's about a 4,000 square foot building. And it could fit on a 90 foot to a 100 foot lot. And that's exactly what those lots are. Those are the ones that are gonna be,
Yeah.
that's where
That is existing code though, so
Right.
with this, I don't know that we're adding a whole lot more in terms of what's already required in existing code with landscape requirements, which
Well, there's
most
eight-
cities of any
there's-
size have.
Yeah,
And by the way, ours are fairly minimal
no,
committed to a
those,
lot.
yeah, those have gone in, 15, 20 years ago, but there's 8 provisions in here that call for green space and trees and whatnot inside this, above and beyond what we're doing now. There's 8 line items. I'm kept 8 between 8 and 9. And then of the 44, and I'm just using, I didn't go, I just count them up. Then it goes to facade, and that's the other thing, if it said to meet current design standards or current product code standards, I feel like by calling out what is popular now, maybe not, is gonna be, we're gonna be updating this thing. Because people's taste and materials change constantly. So I feel like if we could change that verbiage to state, instead of detailing every little thing that goes on a building, I would like to say, hey, whatever is the current trends. So we're meeting current trends, and we're not allowing to go back to something that's not visually appealing, I guess you'd say. And then this goes on to have a lot of good things in there, like making sure the properties, if you're putting 2 properties together, that they go in harmony, and one doesn't look one way and one looks the other way. So I mean, there's good things all the way through. I feel like that area could be a little tough, and then also obviously I really like to dive into making sure that we're any restriction. It's just the smaller lots are tough. It gets tough to develop them, and I just would like to dive into that and make it a little. I mean, you take the Kona Posix, for example. They have a lot there, and now I could be wrong on this, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But if another buyer came and wanted to buy that and put a building on that lot and wanted to sell cars, they would have to get up to code on the rest of the green space requirement, correct? Or would they be grandfathered in under that?
Yeah, the only thing that we have in here that talks about if somebody comes and changes the use of it, we talk about if it goes from an industrial use to another use. So we're probably figuring that industrial uses have just a straight metal building, that sort of thing. Then you would have to put some preferred materials on there, but that's really the only time we talk about if the use is changed coming up to
On that
code.
particular lot, it's gonna be, this is where some of the stuff I'd like to, on that particular lot, you would get into a situation where you would have your 10-foot setbacks at green, which would go in right away. And that's where, the way the parking's set up there now, they could lose 35 to 40 stalls, just like that.
But if you're saying, if a new property owner comes along, buys it,
Right.
but still wants to use it as a car lot.
They're gonna have to change. the
Under
way-
this, they wouldn't have, the use doesn't change, so these
So
provisions
you would
don't
not
apply.
have to, so if I came in there, it's somewhere I want to buy that lot, I want to tear what's there, the building out there now, put up a different building because of the way I want my car lot to look, I would not have to do any green space requirements on that lot if I redeveloped it.
I would
into a car lot.
say, no, the building would have to comply because that's the new building structure and
Right.
you're removing one and putting up a new, but if you're not changing the parking lot and not redoing that over 50% and changing the layout and things, I don't think it hits that exemption. Yeah.
Val, can you read that exemption again, the provision following the casualty loss?
So where such reconstructions, replacements, additions, or enlargements are 50% or greater, these provisions shall apply only to that portion where the new development occurs. So
Right.
that's where I would think if your building comes down and a new one puts up, then that would have to comply with the overlay code. But I don't think you're going to change your impervious coverage. So if you're,
But what we wanted to zone that to C3 at that time?
right, it's I-1 right now,
Right.
and you already have a 10-foot green space requirement in I-1, which is the same as C3. So the zoning wouldn't do anything for you. And prior to that, it says reconstruction, replacement, additions, enlargements of existing uses which change or increase floor area or impervious coverage area by less than 50% is exempt. So you're not changing your impervious coverage more than 50% if you leave it as a car lot.
Unless you add on to the building or have a new building put in place.
And then that only applies to the new development being the building. So the building would comply, but your impervious coverage would not kick in that 50% is how I would do it.
Would that be in contrast to if I bought some R1 lots and wanted to turn to C3?
Well, you're putting impervious coverage on there with parking lots, though.
Right, but you still have parking, you have driveways and sidewalks and garages and houses and whatnot. I'm just worried that that's a little bit of muddy water there, in my opinion. You know,
So
'cause-
prior to, in that same section from where Val's reading, 27-280.24, there's a list of exemptions. So B 5 and 6, 5 addresses the casualty loss, 6 right before where Val was reading says remodeling, rehabilitation, or improvements to existing uses or structures which do not substantially change the location of structures, parking, or other site improvements. All qualify for exemptions. So to me, the example you're using, that's not changing, you're not changing locations, you're not changing necessarily the structures or parking, in that
Right,
example
right.
anyway.
unless I re-pour the parking lot.
We could sit here all night and
I
find
know, that's-
about
but these are the
75 different
these are
scenarios.
the-
But the other thing is, we built into this waiver process that if there's a small lot redeveloper that says, look, I just can't make this work, you know, even though somebody like a Raising Cane's did come in and put in a very small lot, did a lot of landscaping, it looks nice, I think it's good for their business. They made it work, but maybe somebody says, oh, it's too much, I can't make this work. There is a waiver process, and you have to prove undue hardship to get that waiver, but it's built into the policy to, I think, give people the opportunity to say, look, this is just too much.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the waiver process. I mean, I've been through that before. I kind of took us down a wormhole, right, just a minute ago, but you can see where I'm just not quite 100%, it's just not lining up for me, so. And it just has to do with the redevelopment of small lots, and I don't know how to, and some at that, and how do you police the facade? How do you police that 10 years from now? Are we gonna constantly update this to, because one of the provisions is no painted brick. I can tell you right now, painted brick is one of the more is becoming very popular on construction. So that's, but you know what I mean? That's where if we have to go so pop, why don't we have it just say,
Painted brick after the fact, right? I think painted brick is allowed for if it's,
I'm taking it as part of your facade,
Well, I think anytime you look at trends,
right?
you know, that the ordinance is written so that you can go back and
Or just,
have further discussion or change that around.
Or make
You know,
it-
it's like skinny ties, wide ties,
right.
bell bottoms and straight legs, you know, all that stuff changes. So we have the ability then to go in
and there is.
and address that in the future.
No, I think Val, you put a lot of hard work in this. I get that. And it is, a lot of it I agree with. I'm picking on a few small things. I know that. And it's gotta be extremely frustrating for you that I'm up here doing that. Because I know what it's like to have somebody who's not in your profession question you like they are, and that's not fair or good on my part, but I'm not trying to be that way. But I'm just stuck. I got a few hang-ups on that, on a few things, just because of past things I've been through when helping people develop their lots. There's hiccups you run into, and parking stalls are one of them. And so anytime I see something, I know we've been following this code, but I will digress.
Well, and again, I think we understand where you're coming from, Shane, but we did try to promote as much flexibility in here as possible, I think. And even, I think this process has been good, even tabling it from first to second reading to take a break and discuss the billboard application. And I think that was a good process. We decided, look, well, maybe billboards isn't the right place to address this in code. And I think we're going to work with local businesses to revisit that in other areas of code to modernize that area code, but it didn't necessarily fit right here. The temporary merchants thing too, as part of the refining process, said, okay, maybe doesn't make sense, so we'll strike that. I think that you'll find with this, it's going to apply almost entirely to new development. There'll be some redevelopment. There's exemptions to every rule. There'll be some redevelopments, but I'm confident that small lot developers also want their properties to look good and fit in. And really, that's all this does. And it does too allow for an exemption and waiver process if in fact someone feels like, okay, this doesn't fit or this doesn't work for me. They do have an appeal process.
Val, I do have a question. So the landscaping requirements, that is for a parking lot of 6,000 square feet or larger?
That is what we currently have in code that requires and kicks in that 5% of the parking lot to have landscaping and that green space to be part of the tree formula calculation.
In this overlay district, if it should conflict with the city code, the overlay district would take precedence, correct? On any
We have something in code that says the more restrictive apply, whichever that may be.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is this more restrictive in that particular field?
I would say no, since we didn't put a square footage in there.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion?
I guess I got a comment. So what do we do with the person who has recently purchased a property in the event to develop it, and now it falls under one of the eight in that category where it needs to have a waiver or a conditional use? How do we address that individual?
They would have to apply for a conditional use permit.
Yeah, I
But
guess.
when they purchased the property, it was not intact. So now it's up to discretion of others what they can and can't do on that property that they purchased for the intent.
No, you can still do it on the property. They have to apply for a conditional use permit.
If they get the CPU.
CUP.
If the CPU is not warranted or not granted, then they bought that property for whatever value and they can't do anything with it. Is that correct?
Well, that is the idea of having a
Okay.
corridor overlay district.
Okay,
Right.
very good. Thank you.
Open to the meeting.
Yes, sir. Yep.
I'm Randy Mateo. Me and my brother own some property on 275 and 81 both. I'm pretty concerned about the size of our properties are going to fall under that small developments eventually. And I'm kind of worried about the size. I wonder if there should be the provisions of square foot, pick on the big guys on this beautification stuff a little more, and maybe there should be a size, you know, possibly that this would fall under, wouldn't need all the trees and eat up my parking spaces and stuff, you know. Yeah. Because I think it's going to be kind of tough to sell these properties to develop if they have to do this stuff to get it done. It's just going to make it harder for me to. I don't really probably plan to develop myself, but we hope to sell eventually. And I think it'll be a harder sale if they know they got to jump that many hoops. Certainly make it a lot easier for the small development people to want to come in and buy something if you make it easier for them. And that's what you kind of want is development. You know, nobody's going to build anything new anymore. Like on my properties in particular, it'd probably almost all be new construction. So nobody's going to build something substandard to get a business going here. And I think that some of the properties we own would be just pretty small properties. I'd sure rather see not quite so much restriction on them probably. I think it'd be easier to get it developed.
Are there specific things in this ordinance that you think are restrictive beyond what's in existing code already?
I didn't school myself on this as good as I probably should have, but I think it's, you know, to take up parking lot for trees and stuff like that kind of trades is kind of stuff that I'm worried about, I guess, mostly. Type of construction, I don't know if that's going to be a hindrance or not. I didn't look at that stuff that much to know what you guys are all talking about there. But anybody that builds anything new, it seems like they're going to build it modern, you know. That I don't know if they need to be, you know, held by the throat by you guys. Just let them build the code of what they want to build. It seems.
I
like
don't think that's a fair characterization.
Well,
I'd encourage you to read the ordinance and see if you still have the same concerns.
I'm kind of I wasn't ready to come to this meeting today, I guess.
Okay.
Somebody prompted me to come and I didn't study well enough. But that's my concerns with the small properties that like we have are shallow. It'd be hard to get a lot of greenery going and still,
Have you seen the Raising Cane space on 13th Street? Okay. Think it takes away all their parking?
They've got the depth to get that done, and what we have, some of it's a lot shallower unless you go possibly wider, but ours is going to be different than theirs for sure.
Okay.
But, all right, thanks.
Thanks. Any other discussion or questions, council?
I just, what he was saying, just to clarify that, this code, just so it's in your head right now, it really doesn't affect, if you zone C3, right, the 80% impervious coverage part of that code will take you'll meet your green space requirements. So this really, in Randy's case, that's where, when you have a really shallow lot, you got to get really creative. And so that's kind of where some of the discussion that I've been raising up right now tonight. But this code is not, our current green space requirements, this is not really adding to that. Just so you know, I want to be fair on that. I don't want people to think that it's not really, but it is adding a little more of what you have to put in. It's telling you what kind of tree, what kind of this, how wide, that sort of thing is what this is telling you. It's not telling you you've got to add a bunch. So let's clarify that for you guys.
And again, I'd stress that it focuses on new development, and there is a pretty clear exemption, as we addressed, for redevelopment. Is there any other facets of this we want to explore, council, before we vote? Okay, if not, short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to enact Division 7 to Article 8 of Chapter 27 of the Official City Code, providing for the creation of a highway corridor overlay district, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, Granquist, Merrill, McCarthy, Murin, Jackson. Voting in opposition, Arns, Clausen, and Hildebrand. Ordinance number 5774 carries on second reading as amended.
Okay, that takes us to item number 34. I would entertain a motion to consider ordinance number 5775 approving a highway corridor overlay district map. Again, as a note, ordinance number 5775 passed on first reading at the May 2nd meeting and was tabled at the May 16th meeting. So we would need to have a motion first to remove from the table.
I'll make the motion to remove from the table. Second. And offer for consideration. We need a vote on that, I guess, don't we? Yeah. Okay.
Motion second to remove from the table. Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Okay, now we'll look for a motion on the underlying ordinance.
I'll offer for consideration ordinance number 5775.
Motion second. And as far as discussion on this, Val, this just puts in place a geographical definition for the corridor, right? It
Yes.
establishes a map within code.
This is the graphic that goes along with the section of code that actually talks in the text. Yes.
Okay. Any discussion on that, council? Hearing none, short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska. Oops. On the wrong page, sorry. An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to approve the official highway corridor overlay district map of the city and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5775 carries on second reading.
Okay, item number 35, I would look for a motion to consider approval of ordinance number 5784 to amend section 8-28 of the code to update additions, insertions, and changes to the 2018 International Fire Code adopted by the city to allow above-ground storage tanks containing flammable or combustible liquid on airport property, and to remove the requirement that above-ground storage tanks on property annexed into the city be buried within 90 days of annexation.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval of ordinance number 5784.
Second.
Okay, motion and second, and for some background on this, we're going to hear from Terry, or Sean. Terry, Fire Marshal.
A little while. Council and council members, this is brought forth during the annexation of the airport that in prior to 1984, above-ground tanks were allowed in town. Council at that time decided that they didn't want above-ground storage tanks anymore inside the city limits, and when they did that, that precluded them from being there, so they had to go underground. With the annexation of the airport, they did have above-ground storage tanks, and that ordinance kicked in. We made such an order that they would have to put those underground within the 90-day period. That extend that due to issues with ordering, getting stuff in because of the times that we're in right now. It's tough to get things in quickly. Did extend that to a year. The airport authority came back and said that the FAA, which is their governing body, said that they would prefer that the tanks be above ground. We would be one of very few airports in the state of Nebraska that would have underground storage tanks, or in the region for that matter, if we did go and enforce this. So we went through a lot of work, and we've worked on getting this ordinance so that the properties out at the airport, which would be more than just the airport authority, it would be the flying service out there, that they would not have to put their storage tanks underground. Because there is no real danger out there, there's not a lot of things close. There's some other requirements as far as aircraft movement areas that would have to be considered, and they do meet those at this time. So fire department, fire division feels that leaving them at above ground, even though they're in the city limits, and just limit it to that particular property rather than opening the whole city to it would be an issue that would not be a real problem with the fire department.
Thank you, Terry. And as I recall, I think you hit on it, discussion about this, there was a lot of consideration factored into the fact that FAA is highly discouraging below-ground tanks at this point, right?
That's very true, yes.
Yeah, for environmental concerns, so,
Yes.
okay. All right, any questions while Terry's up here?
Terry, are there, besides the airport, are we talking about any other tanks that may be in the annexed area?
Yes, we do. Central Transport on North 81 has 2 tanks that will need to come out because they're not covered under this portion. Plus, their containment is not up to code, so they would have to do something with those anyway.
Okay.
And then they've got a couple of waste oil tanks that would need to be downsized. Waste oil is allowed, but the ones they have there are too large.
I see. And they've been notified of that, I'm assuming, and
Yes.
everybody knows?
Had contact with Joe Abler, who is the principal now that it's kind of passed down to him.
Yeah, okay. And those are the only other ones?
That we are aware of, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I should also note that the Zobek area now has 2 tanks that are going to be removed because they are leaking since this all occurred. So there'll be 2 less tanks at Zobek Oil. Just throwing that out there for you.
Any other questions? Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Any discussion, council? Hearing none, short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend Section 8-28 of the official city code to update additions, insertions, and changes to the 2018 International Fire Code adopted by the city to allow above-ground storage tanks containing flammable or combustible liquid on airport property, to remove the requirement that above-ground storage tanks on property annexed into the city be buried within 90 days of annexation, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5784 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I would propose that we suspend the rules and pass ordinance number 5784 on second.
Second.
Third.
Okay, motion is second to suspend the rules and approve on second and third readings. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5784 carries on second and third.
Okay, item 36, would look for a motion to consider approval of ordinance number 5785, annexing a tract of land generally located approximately a quarter mile east of North 37th Street and south of West Eisenhower Avenue.
I'll make a motion for consideration and approval of ordinance number 5785.
Second.
Motion second, and Steve Ramus, could you give us some background on this, please?
Mayor, council, a local developer has recently acquired this parcel and is desirous of developing this into an R2 development with triplexes and duplexes. They wrote a letter requesting that we annex this into the city boundary. It is located on the south side of Eisenhower and is bounded by additional property owned by this developer. On the south side, this would be annexing in the entire parcel, approximately 18.8 acres. There is a map included in the agenda packet in the annexation there showing the proposed parcel. Again, it's about, the center of that portion that abuts Eisenhower is about 1,500 feet east of 37th Street.
Steve, you said duplexes and triplexes is the plan?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Discussion?
I would note that this can only be passed on first reading.
Yeah, since it's an annexation, one reading at a time. No discussion, short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to annex to said city a part of the northeast quarter of the northwest quarter and part of the west half of the northwest quarter of Section 17, Township 24 North, Range 1 west of the 6th PM, Madison County, Nebraska, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, and provide that this ordinance shall be published in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5785 carries on first reading.
Item 37, I'd look for a motion to consider approval of ordinance number 5786, annexing a tract of land generally located immediately west of part of Walters, East Knolls, 13th edition.
Make a motion of consideration for ordinance 5785? 86, sorry.
I'll second.
Motion second, and Steve, some background on this as well, please.
Mayor and council, this is an extension of the Walters East Knolls subdivision going on to the east of Victory Road. This is approximately a 6.6 acre area. Would be titled Walters East Knolls 14th edition as this goes into development. Their engineer, Manelli Wagner, wrote a letter requesting the annexation. There is a map attached that does show the intended subdivision lot and block and the connection to East Benjamin Avenue there on Walters Drive. So I'd answer any questions Mayor and Council would have.
Questions or discussion, council? Just some general color commentary for me. I do appreciate that we're seeing voluntary annexations like this as our community grows. As we all might remember, we went through a pretty comprehensive annexation process last year, and part of that was needed because for past decades there wasn't a lot of this done when new development happened, and then we had to come back and do it in one fell swoop, which was not an easy process. I think this is much more orderly, helps us plan for infrastructure, helps us grow the city in a more orderly way. So I do appreciate the fact that we're seeing developers bring forward these voluntary annexations, and staff is encouraging and facilitating those. If there's no further discussion, short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to annex to said city a part of the northeast quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 24, Township 24 North, Range 1 West of the 6 p.m. Madison County, Nebraska, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, and to provide that this ordinance shall be published in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5786 carries on first reading.
Item 38, I would look for a motion to consider approval to award a contract to Steve Harris Construction Incorporated of Homer, Nebraska for the City of Norfolk East Benjamin Avenue Trail, RTP 2019-003 project for a base bid of $558,104.16 plus alternates for a total contract amount of $687,113.16.
I'll make the motion.
Motion is second, and for some background, we'll hear from Anna Allen, City Assistant Engineer.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Previously, we have had this project planned and designed by Manelli Wagner and Associates. This is for building a trail along Benjamin Avenue from Victory Road east to Highway 35 and extending the trail south of Benjamin along the west side of Victory. Steve Harris Construction came in as low bidder of 4 contractors that submitted bids for this project. Steve Harris out of Homer, Nebraska had a total base bid of $558,104, and with the alternate bid items of $129,000, the total came in at $687,000. It was pretty close in cost with the engineer's base bid, slightly higher with the increase of cost of materials. So we have a recommendation to award from Manelli Wagner and Associates, along with city staff, and a notice to proceed from the Nebraska Game and Parks, who we had gotten some grant money from.
And out of just curiosity, I know everything is going up. Can you give us what was that number that went up? The
Which
material increase?
specific, like which specific material or?
Yeah, I mean,
You know, looking through it, it's kind of across the board, you know, a little bit with the concrete, some with steel.
I mean, was it like 3%, 5%, 7%?
It was the base bid, the engineer's base bid was 510,000. So, about 50,000 over base bid
Okay.
on that. But this was also engineer's estimate, I believe, came out in 2021.
That'll do it.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
So it took a little while to get documents in order to get this bid out. So.
And you mentioned a state of Nebraska grant for this. What was the total? Do you know what the total award for the grant was?
For the grants.
Hannah or Steve, you know?
We have in here, federal funding, was that the 250,000, I believe, Steve, from the federal grants.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, council?
This is the portion that's already been prepped, I guess, for that. Am I thinking right?
Correct,
When,
yes.
when they did Benjamin.
Yep, when the county went and redid that Benjamin Avenue east of Victory Road, that area for the trail alignment has been graded out and prepped. So there'll be minimal site preparation on that and minimal subgrade and work on that. So
Okay, that's what I thought.
should be pretty quick and easy to get it in there.
Next question was on the alternate bids, and this is for accepting both alternates included in the base bid also.
Correct.
So I'm just curious on what's the purposing of putting rebar, reinforcing steel is what it calls for in here.
It does. It calls for the reinforcing steel and the additional expansion joints because the majority of this trail along the north side of Benjamin, east of Victory, will be on the Northeast Nebraska Community College property. We have a private easement agreement with them to put the trail on their property. They have their own specifications for trails and other items on their properties, and they require the reinforcing steel in the trail along their section of property. To add to that, Northeast Nebraska Community College has agreed to fund that cost for the additional steel and then some. So they do have a little over $300,000 that they're putting into this project as well.
That was my follow-up. You nailed it. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other question? Help me remember, is there lighting planned for this trail on this project or not? No?
No, Mayor, there's not. We had quite a bit of conversation around that back when we went into the project as to whether to light it to the trail lighting requirements or to light it lesser there, which is not uncommon in trail projects. Between the community college and us, we decided to put that on hold in terms of the lighting and leave that up to another conversation. It would have been about $250,000 to light that mile.
Okay. All right, any other questions or discussion? Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Last but not least, item 39. Look for a motion to consider approval to award a contract to Retchins Construction Incorporated of Tilden, Nebraska for the Water Extension District number 127 Channel Road project for an amount of $192,252.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion and second, and background on this. Anna, again, please.
Thank you. So the Extension District number 127 on Channel Road has been discussed and approved previously at council meetings to extend an 8-inch water line north along Channel Road. There was a property in the area that had a well failure, so in turn we needed to get a design ready to put in a new water line. This project will be assessed to the adjacent property owners. So we have a request to accept the bid from Rutchins Construction in the amount of $192,252. Rutchins Construction was the only bid we received. The other potential bidder was unable to bid the project because of material. They were unable to get material in time, and it's a time-sensitive project.
Did that fall within the engineer's estimate?
Yes, well, it was higher than the engineer's estimate by about 21,000, and that is due to the cost of the 8-inch ductile iron pipe water line.
Okay.
So the engineer's estimate was a little lower than what came in on that.
Okay, and the original estimate was what, how old?
This was back in April, March, April, I believe.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Hearing none, please vote.
Are all council members present voting in the affirmative? Motion carries.
All right, that concludes this meeting of the Norfolk City Council. We are adjourned.